Hi everyone, welcome back to the official I Dream of Indie Games podcast. I'm Ole Gamer Joe, and as always, I'm here with BarelyMagicMike and SilentSigns. We're dedicated to giving a platform to the indie gaming community as well as its developers and publishers, with daily reviews, gameplay impressions, upcoming releases, top 10 videos, and of course, this show, Outside of the Echo Chamber. We greatly appreciate everyone who supports independent content. If you're as passionate about indie games as we are, you can help maintain indie visibility by visiting patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. By joining, you'll access the best indie gaming community on Discord, early ad-free shows like Upcoming Indies, and this podcast 3 days early. Now that's one hell of a deal, folks. Patreon members also receive shoutouts at the end of every single video we produce on the channel, regardless of the tier chosen. But best of all, SilentSigns, what?
You're supporting indie visibility.
That is right. In today's episode, as always, we'll cover some indie gaming news stories, present our question of the day for both myself and the team, which you can also join in on if you'd like, discuss what's happening with the website and channel, and of course, our weekly discussion focused on the importance of narrative in games this week.
Hey, it's really warmed up today. It's 32 degrees.
Wow, that's good news. It's been freezing here in New England.
I know.
We actually, I did a comparison about 3 or 4 days ago to Alaska, because I'm like, surely Alaska's colder than here, and no, Alaska was warmer than New England at the time of that weather check. As a reminder, this podcast is available on Spotify through our YouTube channel in the podcast section and on YouTube Music. So, how has everyone been? SilentSigns, anything new in life?
Cold, hibernating, nothing's new.
Yeah, same. It's been cold. Things have been busy. I'm looking forward to the warmer months. But I'm really happy releases are picking up again because there's some cool stuff already coming out.
Yeah, releases are definitely picking up. I think we have something like 4 or 5 reviews going live next week. We'll touch on that a little bit later in the show. But first, some indie gaming news. Just a few small stories. Well, I don't want to say they're small because they're actually big stories. There just weren't a lot of news stories. And some of these games are going to be more in that AA range, I would say, but we thought they were worth mentioning regardless. Let's start with South of Midnight being announced. SilentSigns, we just watched the trailer for South of Midnight together. I think this game looks pretty neat. Takes place in the Deep South, has sort of this stop-motion Wallace and Gromit style to it. What did you think of the trailer for South of Midnight?
I was immediately captivated by the art style. And then the rest of it, I was like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter because this looks so cool. But there's some really neat, mythos, I don't know, whatever you call it, like the creatures and stuff that are based on
folklore, I guess.
Folklore. Thank you. There's the word I was looking for. Really, really neat. I love when we take like pieces of different cultures and put it into games and kind of, share that type of storytelling. So I'm excited to see how this one comes out.
When I saw the reveal the other day, I was kind of in and out. I was working during it, so I only caught like snippets of the combat and a little bit of that stop motion style. I thought it looked cool, but the combat looked maybe a little floaty, like not really sure how that's going to pan out. But I just watched the story trailer, and it looks really cool, and I love the idea of a game set in the Deep South and like all these mystical creatures everywhere. I mean, it looks like it has a lot of potential. Cautiously optimistic, I'll say.
The other big story this week was involving Claire Obscure, Expedition 33, which again, I just saw the trailer for before doing this show. A lot of people have been talking to us about it in our Discord community, saying how great it looks. And I have to agree based on the 2 minutes I just watched. Mike made a good comparison before we started recording to Lost Odyssey, which is this old Xbox 360 JRPG, came from Mistwalker. They're a company that kind of formed out of pieces of the Final Fantasy crew. And this game very much looks like that title. Great visual style to it, kind of dark and ominous, but it doesn't necessarily ring your typical JRPG cast. It seems to take itself quite seriously. It's not bubbly.
The art style seems really cool. Looks like some really neat turn-based combat, which I'm always a fan of.
Yeah, I don't really get excited for RPGs very often, but it seems like, I was a pretty big fan of Lost Odyssey back in the day too. It seems like the type of RPG that we really haven't gotten in a very long time, and I think it looks amazing. The thing that's going to be a make or break for me is, will the story be interesting? Because I'm not playing like a 40, 50 plus hour game if the story doesn't hook me. But it looks phenomenal. I'm
also
hoping for good things.
Not that it's a bad thing, but I feel like a lot of RPGs we get now, if it's not like a AAA budget RPG, are like retro style, 8-bit, like a nod to that time in gaming, if it's not exactly looking like that time in gaming. But I feel like this is a more modern RPG.
Yeah, it definitely feels more in that AA range. Not quite AAA, but not quite like your usual, like you said, the pixelated art, the classic throwback 16-bit style RPG. So I feel pretty optimistic about it so far, but we shall see as the months go on leading up to that release. Did they say when that was releasing? Did anyone catch that?
April 24th.
April 24th. Okay, so actually not too far away. That's pretty cool.
No, it's only a couple weeks after South of Midnight.
Oh, perfect. That's good. That's good timing then. Those two releases, we won't have to wait long at all. So another news story I pulled. This comes from Games Press, one of my favorite sources to use. Fatal Fury, the classic fighting game series from SNK. It's returning with City of Wolves, and they've announced an open beta. This is going to be taking place February 20th through the 24th. Quote, PC and console players can choose from 8 total characters and throw down with friends in 3 online modes: ranked match, casual match, or room match. Those eager to hone their skills and learn dynamic combo routes can practice in the offline training mode. SilentSigns, does a new Fatal Fury speak to you at all?
Honestly, not really. But I think you could always go back and play the classic Fatal Fury. Cool if you're a fan of the series. I don't know. These days, I've wanted to branch out more. Like, I don't want to go back. I want to go forward. I want to see new things, new franchises. Like, give new concepts a chance.
Mike, any excitement here for Fatal Fury City of Wolves? I don't really know anything about it. The art style looks cool, but I'm kind of in the camp of it's probably not my thing. Lots of big boobies and stuff, and whatever.
Woo!
That doesn't sound bad at all.
Sold!
Sounds pretty good. Now I really want to play it. No, but the Fatal Fury series, it's been around for a long time. This dates back to 1991 when Fatal Fury came out, so it's cool that these old nostalgic things can still live on in modern times, I suppose. Street Fighter, obviously, still kicking around. But fighting games in general, there's just not as many as there used to be. Fighting games were massive growing up in the 90s for me. The arcade scene, there were so many fighting games. And now they've become their own little niche, I would say.
I think it's probably hard to compete with the big ones.
In other news, Wales Interactive is thrilled to announce a partnership with Curveball and 2-Star Games to bring the viral indie horror game Choo Choo Charles to the PlayStation 5 in a physical boxed edition. This collaboration marks an exciting new chapter for one of the most successful horror titles of recent years. I never got around to playing Choo Choo Charles. I really wanted to. I'm not sure what happened. I was probably just playing some other video game or a million others that were coming out, but I always thought it looked like a lot of fun. So it's nice that this is going to be going to the PlayStation 5, so more people will be able to enjoy it. Did any of you, I'll start with SilentSigns again, play or have interest in Choo Choo Charles?
I was definitely interested, but sadly did not get to play. I've seen plenty of people playing it, though. I just think the concept is hilarious. Choo Choo Charles.
It totally is.
Terrifying Thomas the Tank Engine. It's just, I don't know. I love it. I love that they're coming out with a physical version of it for people to purchase, because I know a lot of you out there love your physical editions of things. So if you're a collector, that's really neat.
I didn't get a chance to play it. I will say when it released, the reviews were pretty bad overall. Not terrible. It has like a 57 on OpenCritic right now, but not great. And that kind of turned me off from it. But it seems like the user reviews on Steam are a lot better. So maybe it was better than I was giving it credit for, because I don't trust a lot of reviewers nowadays. So maybe it is worth a shot.
I do also wonder if it's one of those things where it's so bad it's kind of good,
That may totally be the case, yeah. How could it not be at least a little bit entertaining?
That seems to be the case with a lot of indie horror games where they're pretty janky and poorly made, but people love them anyways because they're so stupid and fun.
Not just games, but even horror movies. I'm a huge horror movie fan, but let's face it, half of the time we're laughing at them because they're so bad.
I just did that this past weekend, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
How do y'all feel about grandmas? Do you have your grandmothers still living? Are you fortunate enough to have your grandmothers in your lives?
Never did.
Oh, well, I did at one point, but no, not anymore. Not for 5 years or so.
All right. Well, yes, both of my grandmothers are gone as well, unfortunately, but at least I get to play a video game themed around grandmas. It's called Grandma No, and it's coming to, it looks like PC first. So it says, quote here, "Get ready for a wild ride in Grandma No." This is coming from Super Rare Games and Wall Ride Games. In this chaotic and funny game, players will step into Grandma's slippers, where her day-to-day house chores become challenges where things always end up going off track. In Grandma No, it's up to the player to keep things under control, or the house turns into a whirlwind of chaos. A range of challenges and scenarios that need to be resolved awaits. What chaos ensues when Grandma gets stuck babysitting her grandkid out of the blue? So I watched the trailer for this. I thought it looked hilariously fun. Definitely has that party game vibe to it where things are going out of control. What was that baby game we talked about recently on the Weird Games podcast?
Baby Storm.
Yes, Baby Storm. I almost kind of got that vibe, but this seems much more well made than that game.
Yeah, I could see that.
What were your thoughts, Silent Signs, on Grandma No?
It looks so stupid, I kind of want to try it. Kind of how I felt about Choo Choo Charles, if we're being honest.
Yes or no on Grandma No, Mike?
I'm leaning yes. I kind of like the idea of playing as a grandma who should have gone to Shady Pines long ago and is just kind of still making things happen around the house, much to everyone's detriment. Looks funny.
All right, on to our staff question for the day. What's the first game you ever played, and how did it make you feel? Let's start with Mike, seeing we've been going to Silent Signs a lot.
The first game I ever played was Pitfall on my sister's Atari that she never ever used, and I loved it even though I was so bad at it. I mean, I never made it past like the opening few screens. I don't know how I tried so many times, but no, I don't think I ever made any material progress in Pitfall, but I just loved it. It was my earliest memory of a platformer, and I love platformers now, so maybe that had something to do with it.
Pitfall is a great game, but it is brutally difficult. That's something I played.
So
it wasn't
hard.
my first game, but hey, I played it pretty early on. I actually had a friend that had an Atari. That's how I was able to play that one. I never actually owned an Atari myself, fun fact, which I guess will lead me. My first console was actually the NES, probably like a lot of you listening out there. And it was the first game that came with it was the Mario Duck Hunt combo pack. So it's a pretty generic answer. It's probably the same answer a lot of people give. But my first video game was really Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo with that Duck Hunt pack. Silent Signs, how about you?
I mean, now it's going to just be boring. My first game was Duck Hunt on the NES, and I was like, I don't know, maybe 3 years old playing it, I remember. And I think that's like the most accessible a video game could possibly be at that point. You just have the little light gun and you're pointing it at the screen, you know? Like, I don't think I could have handled the platforming because I was 3. I don't have that sort of hand-eye coordination. Some would argue I still don't. But the little light gun, that I could handle.
Yeah, it actually remains the only game that I recall my father ever playing because all it did was involve shooting a gun at a screen. He was pretty good at shooting a shotgun off into the sky at the birds. So
yeah, 3-year-old me was too.
I never played that at all.
Never? Oh,
No,
it's a
I had a
classic.
weird gap in consoles. Like I played the Atari a little bit, and then I had like a Game Boy Color for a while and played Pokemon and all that stuff. But my next console after that wasn't until the Dreamcast. So I never even had a Nintendo console until the Wii U, which I don't know why the Wii U was the one of all of them that I chose to buy, but so be it.
Interesting. That is interesting. See, we went NES, SNES, and then
PS1 probably?
PS1.
Yep. PS2.
I could probably even just do this in order. Yeah, was it PS2 or Wii first? Which
PS2.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it was PS2.
Quite a bit earlier. PS2
And
is
then Wii.
2001, I want to say.
That's where it starts to get fuzzy, but I know we had both of those things when they came out. And then after that, it took a long, long while. I don't think we ever got a PlayStation 3 until I left the house and like went to college, and that was
Oh, when you moved in with me, we had the PlayStation.
no, but I mean like my family.
Oh, right, yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was a bit of a late bloomer, but I did love my Dreamcast, and Shenmue was the first game I ever played that I was like, wow, this is what games can do, and I was like obsessed from that point on.
See, I never had a Sega.
Oh, really? Interesting.
And
Yeah,
any kind of Sega.
I had Genesis, then I had Dreamcast, but I actually never had the in-between Sega consoles
And
there.
I also never had an Xbox console.
I really wanted a Saturn. I got a Saturn much later in life, but PS1 was just the obvious better choice.
In fact, to this day, I have never owned an Xbox console.
That's impressive. I had a 360, which I thought was a good console outside of breaking like 6 times on me with the red lights.
I got what was worse than the red light because I had this thing where like I was playing Burnout Paradise one day in college, and suddenly everything on the screen, all the colors looked like super saturated and messed up, and then the image completely cut out and all I could hear was sound. So something went very wrong internally, and they wouldn't replace it without charging me a bunch of money because it wasn't a red light issue.
Sounds like every time I go to the
so-
doctor's.
I often look back on that whole situation and I'm like, only Microsoft really could have absorbed a hit like this, because everyone's console was breaking, malfunctioning. People were on the early days of YouTube wrapping that thing in a towel to get it running again. They must have spent so much money to revitalize the Xbox 360. And in the end, it was a successful console, despite one of the biggest disasters I can recall.
Wait, why were they wrapping it in a towel? I never owned an Xbox. So I
This
need
was a
context.
trick, apparently. Your overheating console, by overheating it even further, would start to work again.
What?
So people were literally wrapping towels around it to get it to turn on again. It was really weird time in gaming. There were all kinds of hacks to try.
Did
because
anyone burn their house down trying that? Just curious.
I feel like there were some fires. You could look up like early 07, 08 YouTube videos of people just dicking around with their red light Xbox 360s.
See, I didn't mess with any of that. I had my SNES, and I carried that thing through my whole life. I dropped that thing on a concrete floor, and it still worked.
Still runs today.
That's the kind of console I need.
I want to know from both of you too, like, when did you realize, well, games are always going to be something that's a part of my life now, and maybe I'll even be in the games industry? Is that something that you ever even thought about growing up playing games? Or was it just like, oh, this is a fun hobby, I probably will grow out of it?
Yeah, I feel like, again, Shenmue was kind of that introduction to to how immersive a game could be. And, after Dreamcast, I did end up buying a PS2. And that's when I discovered like Ratchet and Clank, and then I discovered like how amazing platformers could be, and Sly Cooper, and like, at that point I was in love. Yeah, it was always going to be a part of my life. And there was a time like a decade ago where I wrote reviews for a few different websites that were really small scale and didn't get a lot of traffic and didn't have a lot of kind of commitment to sticking around, so they all went under. But it is excellent to be doing that again.
I think Joe did that as well.
Yeah, I knew at a pretty young age I had to be involved in the games industry somehow. I just had no idea how to do it because I wasn't a kid that was really interested in college and getting this fancy degree or anything. And I didn't want to make games, but I really wanted to talk about them, since I could remember opening up those magazines when I was a kid, like EGM, and I'd see them have the score with the little blurb about the game. I was like, that's what I want to do. And I've been wanting to do it ever since. So it's been a struggle to get into the industry. I wrote for a while for a publication called, I think it was PlayStation Unlimited was the name of them, or something like that. Some sort of site. I don't remember the
Something
name.
like
of
that? Yeah, it was PlayStation something.
Yeah, you can tell how well that went.
Yeah.
So we were around for
It was
like,
good while it lasted.
we were around for like 6 months or so, and then that went under, and it's like, how the heck do I figure this out on my own? Then the pandemic hit, and I had a lot of time suddenly, and I sat down and really thought about it, and like, well, YouTube's doing well, so
Well, there was also the time that you started trying to make music for a game. that
yeah,
somebody was
I
making.
did. I did try to compose for a little bit of time there, but I knew at a very young age I just had to have my hand in it somehow. I just had to figure out a way. Well, how can I actually make money doing something I care about? And YouTube, unfortunately, is the best solution to that right now that I see.
Unfortunately.
I mean, fortunately too, yeah. But like, it would be great if I could just run my own company without this big brother above me telling me what I can and can't do as far
Good
as
luck
videos.
making money with that.
Yeah. So no, it works out. I can't complain too much about YouTube. They have their rules, they have their issues, but I'm blessed to have a following that cares about gosh, I'm still sometimes shocked. I post a video, I'm like, what? That many people cared that I talked about a video game. That's pretty cool. But I'm glad I stumbled my way into the industry somehow. SilentSigns, is it something you ever thought you'd see yourself in, games? Or
I definitely grew up on video games, and then there was a period in my life where I completely stopped playing video games at all.
I think we all have that, don't we?
I don't know, but it was around high school time, and I was struggling to like fit in and observe what other people were doing, and I was like, okay, nobody else is doing this, so like maybe me neither. And then I met friends, and we really started getting into playing Guitar Hero and Rock Band, and then I like got all of those games and all of the stupid plastic instruments. And I was like, oh, shit, yeah, there's other ways to play games that aren't just, like, sitting in my basement playing my SNES anymore. And then I don't think I ever stopped again after that.
Yeah, so you went from, like, old school Nintendo girl to that break in between the awkward high school years.
Yeah.
And then you rediscovered your love for games again.
Yeah, with rhythm games. Thank you, rhythm games. And then as far as, like, making a career out of it, I always wanted to be in journalism. I actually was heavily involved with newspapers in the past. Like in college, I was the entertainment editor of the newspaper, so I mean we're not too far off, but I was heavily focused on music at that time in my life. Still a big music person to this day, so it wasn't necessarily strictly games, but then kind of made sense. I like both of these things, and like combine them together, and what do you get? Here we are.
Yeah, I should also say I Dream of Indie is probably not what a lot of people would consider a like stable career even to this day.
It's not my career.
but no, we're really blessed to be able to do this and really just have a following of any kind. It's not easy work. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of time and energy. But you do it more for it being something you love. So it's good to have these passion projects.
Except when we're playing a terrible game and then we ask ourselves, why are we doing this?
Well, you love the idea of that terrible game.
We could be doing anything right now, but we're sitting and playing this.
That's like any job, though. You have your good days and your bad days, right? Or are they all just bad at your normal job? I don't know.
I should go play Guitar Hero again.
Do we want to go through the hassle of plastic instruments everywhere again?
I really want to.
I don't even know if I have that stuff anymore.
I've seen that some folks have created guitars that could be used with the PC, and then there's actually like I don't know if it's Guitar Hero or Rock Band or which one it's a knockoff of, but there's pretty much every song you can think of on there.
Yeah, similar thing for DDR.
Oh, nice.
We have the USB pad for DDR, and we have all the tracks.
Boy, howdy, I want to try that real bad.
Yeah, you can buy a USB guitar.
Did either of you ever play DJ Hero?
I wanted to, but I never did.
Very briefly, we tried it at our friend's house.
Oh, you're right. The thing I remember most about that game is they just could not sell it, and there were stacks in like Target and all those stores, Walmart.
It was actually kind of fun, though.
Yeah.
Was it really?
It was so much fun. I actually loved it, and it was such a shame it didn't sell because it was great. I had a great time with it.
Yeah, it was really cool. But then I think that was kind of the point that people were getting out of the rhythm game with like stupid components.
I think it was probably
category.
That. And I don't know. Do kids dream about like DJing as opposed to being like rock stars?
Have you seen a college?
I never went to college really in a serious capacity, so I don't know. I never met anyone that wanted to be a DJ. Like, no offense to anyone that's.
I have. I have.
But I met a lot of people like, I'm going to be a rock star, that kind of thing. So maybe I just thought that's maybe why Guitar Hero caught on more. But you're right, it was late in the span of all of these rhythm games, and then they had already introduced drums and all this stuff. Well,
speaking of, that was like the age of like proprietary things that you needed, like the Tony Hawk game where there was the stupid skateboard that you
was that Tony Hawk Ride, right?
Yes.
That looked so bad.
I heard it was really bad.
It was. It was really bad. We tried it, again, at the same friend's house.
Oh, you're right. The balance board type thing that didn't work right. I forgot all about that.
Stupid.
That was a pretty dumb
and
idea.
I love Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Do you think they could pull something off like that with VR now, where it kind of feels like you're on a skateboard? Or
They have.
Oh, they have. Okay.
They have. That is definitely a thing, and I've heard it's actually quite good. I think VR Skater, and then there might be another one.
My fear is just falling.
Like
totally.
in real life?
Yes, in real life.
Yeah.
Like how do you like create the feeling of being on a skateboard? and balance your body.
I was ready to fall playing the stupid pirate game that
Exactly.
we had. So, and that wasn't even, I wasn't even supposed to be moving. So,
Have you all tried any of the VR roller coasters by any chance?
Oh, yeah. I put my mother-in-law in it. She screamed the whole time. It was hilarious.
I have to admit, I'm kind of been using it as training to hype myself up because I hate roller coasters in real life, but I want to start riding them because my daughter enjoys all those fun rides. You know, I want to be able to go on them with her. And like, I've been training up myself a little bit by doing the VR roller coaster. And I feel like, okay, my stomach's kind of getting used to this now. So
believe it or not, I have been on many a roller coaster. I know you wouldn't think that about me because I get motion sick playing first-person video games, but I've been on many roller coasters.
Do you enjoy them?
I love roller coasters.
It depends on the type of coaster and the type of movement. So, like, my main point of reference for roller coasters would be like Six Flags, right? So, I've been on, I'm sure like the New Jersey Six Flags has the equivalent of the same things that the ones that we have are. But like, there's the Superman, which has the giant drop.
Oh, yes. That scares me even more now because someone did actually die on that ride.
So that's normally fine for me, but my friend brought me to this opening day of a virtual reality coaster, actually, where you sat on the Superman ride and you put on a VR headset. This was like maybe 10 years ago at this point. And then like while you were on the ride, you'd be like looking around and like the Superman would be fighting, I don't know, any Superman
Was the
villains.
Green Goblin flying around, just throwing pumpkins at you?
Is the Green Goblin a Superman villain?
Oh, shit, Superman. No, that's
I think it's
Batman.
Spider-Man.
I was going to say.
Oh, Spider-Man. I'm mixing up my
I
character.
feel like I'm having a stroke. Anyway, there was some Superman villain flying around out there.
I'm trying to think of Doomsday.
And
There's
it
a
was like really
Superman
cool for a hot minute while like I was on the coaster and like seeing the sights and Superman was there and he's like waving at me. And then the headset died. And then we reached the top of the summit. And then I was blindly free falling. And it was the worst experience
That is
of my
so
entire
terrifying.
life.
Wow.
So I don't think I could go on the Superman anymore. But I really love the Batman ride. That was my story.
No VR on the Batman then, right?
No.
Okay.
No, they totally did away with the VR headsets.
Yeah, that's probably the
general.
right thing to do. I feel like VR headsets batteries could run out quite easily.
Yeah, it
so-
was bad.
Yeah, that's.
Anyway, that was my roller coaster trauma, but I like most roller coasters.
I will say, if you're gonna get me on a roller coaster, it'll be that Donkey Kong Country one. That's
Oh my
coming out.
god, I want to go on that.
That looks
so bad.
freaking fun in the
Oh,
new Nintendo World.
I hadn't
They're
heard of
op-
that one.
Oh
Yeah,
my
no,
god.
they've
It's-
opened Nintendo World in
Yeah.
Japan now, and I think California, and it's coming to Florida this
and
year.
it's gonna be like Minecart Madness and Donkey Kong, where you're
Yeah,
on the
so
mine-
literally, like
and
how
it
the
jumps
jumps
the
are.
track.
You're
So
gonna
cool.
actually get raised up into the sky, like it's emulating those jumps in the game, and it looks so cool.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, check
okay.
that out.
That sounds neat.
anyways, that was a tangent on roller coasters. I don't know how we got there, but
VR roller coasters.
yeah. Let's get back to our main discussion now, though, or let's jump into it rather.
Okay.
Today we're going to talk about the role of narrative in video games and how important you all feel narrative is to the gaming experience. You know, I was amazed as a kid growing up when I first got into JRPGs. I was like, wow, you can do a lot of stuff with games that I never even imagined. Tell full-fledged stories, develop these characters into more than just like, oh, I'm Mario the plumber and I'm here to save the princess and stuff like that. And you started to realize you could have full-on character development, worlds, all of this lore and stuff. I realized that that was possible with games at a pretty early age. And I've always felt narrative is quite important ever since then, depending on the game. So now if you have a platformer to this day, I feel like we don't really need a forced-in narrative in a Mario game. We kind of know the goal. Like, a little bit of story to set it up is cool, but that's not the main focus here. But in an RPG, obviously, it remains very important to this day. And I think in a lot of third-person action titles, too, people are more interested in the character development, the story, the world, and learning more about the world. The Witcher, games like this. There's a lot of examples where narrative is very important. But do you think sometimes too much of a focus is put on narrative, too? I'll turn this over to Mike first.
Good, because I just talked a lot.
I really, really love a powerful narrative in a game. It's a lot of what gets me to play certain games, and I get really disappointed if I invest a lot of time in a game and the story isn't quite up to snuff in the end. I'm looking at you, Death Stranding. But I actually have what might be a controversial opinion to some, which is that I feel like too many games have a narrative and really should stop. Like really, like they aren't really trying hard enough to make anything actually good. I think Nintendo is actually especially guilty of this, where there will just be kind of this half-assed story just shoehorned in for the sake of clicking through some dialogue prompts, and it's just kind of a waste of time for everybody. It's like, you're not going to put effort into the story if the story's not intended to be engaging or good, or at least kind of like cute and charming. Like, just make it super skippable, or don't make it at all. Like, I appreciate that certain racing games don't have any sort of story and just get you right into the game, for example. And then you have racing games like Forza Horizon that have this awful story that is mandatory and unskippable at times, and it's like, why would you do that? It's nobody wins there. But so my answer is, I love a good story in games, but I love it when it's actually good. And I wish if there wasn't an intention to make it good, that it would just not exist at all, if that makes sense.
I feel Mike brings up a pretty good point there with Nintendo games, because sometimes it's like, okay, well, in a 2D platformer style game like a Mario, do I really need much story behind? It's time to stop Bowser again. But if you have a game like Paper Mario, where the writing actually makes the game better, in my opinion, then it can be a good thing. You have a lot of humor going on, you're developing the characters, making them more interesting. So it really does depend on the genre a lot for me. SilentSigns, I'll let you talk, though.
I think one thing that we run into in a lot of indie games is that a developer comes up with a story and makes it the primary focus of the game, but the story is not interesting, or it just doesn't grab you immediately, and it tries to force feed you a lot of information at once, which would be fine if it got its hooks in you and you were instantly engaged. But not to throw this game under the bus, but because we just played it very recently, was that Strands game called Eternal Strands? Eternal Strands. They try really hard to put a lot of story into that game, but the story is so many words. It is just a story that I could not get myself into. I don't know if you had a similar feeling about that game.
Yeah, that review will be live. We'll talk on that a little bit later.
They're basically trying to create like a J.R.R. Tolkien-esque universe with like, oh, there's these people in this realm and that realm, and this is the thing you have to do. And it's like nobody's that invested in Eternal Strands. Like, I'm so sorry.
That's pretty brutal when a game tries to tell a story and it tries so desperately to do so, but you just can't care about it.
You just can't get into it. That I find so frustrating. Like, I know there's a lot of effort put into that. Like, somebody wrote a lot of text, but I just couldn't. I couldn't bring myself, like, there are so many lines of text that were just, you had to, like, cycle through the whole thing. We're actually playing a game right now that I have similar feelings about, but I can't really talk about that yet.
Not quite as heavily, but yeah.
Not quite as heavily, but still I have a similar feeling on that. So,
well, I want to ask you then, what do you think the balance is? How do you figure out a way to tell enough story where you're not boring the audience while still having enough gameplay to keep them entertained?
Well, I feel like those are two separate things. Like, if you
but they have to come together, right? You have to have some story and gameplay.
There has to be kind of a happy marriage of compromise, right? Like, I don't want to be playing through a game that is 40 hours long and 30 of those 40 hours are me sitting and reading text.
Oh, that's way too much.
I just don't, and that's what it starts to feel like sometimes. If it's like an action-based game, I want the action to feel like it's dramatically more than the text.
Then again, with like a visual novel, you need the writing to be good, right?
But that's it. You know what you're signing up for when you're playing a visual novel.
How about like an RPG, though? If you're loving the gameplay of an RPG, but you're hating the story, you think that's a pretty big problem, right?
A huge problem.
Yeah, because a lot of RPGs are based on it.
Exactly. Yeah. You're investing a lot of time into it.
Yeah. I honestly think it completely depends on the quality of the story. I mean, look, you have a lot of the Metal Gear games having like 45-minute cutscenes and stuff, and people don't mind because it's so like
interesting,
zany and interesting, even if it doesn't always totally make sense. Putting that aside, it's compelling. It has to be compelling. I don't care at all how much story is in a game. It has to be compelling story. If it's not, then unfortunately the writers of that story have failed. I mean, they really have to. You got to bring your A game.
I agree with you. And I think when they try and throw too many concepts or like too many characters at you at once, it becomes like overwhelming to the point that you no longer have the will to to learn or care.
And I think Mike has a really good point there. You look at the Metal Gear series, people are willing to sit through hours, literally up to an hour-long cutscenes, because they're interested in what's going on with it. So that's tough to do. Only like a certain mind like a Kojima can pull something off like that. But if you can, it's awesome. There's certainly games with enormously long cutscenes that have held people's interest. You know, you look at games like Xenosaga and stuff like that. But
I love Xenosaga.
It's basically like watching it's like watching a huge science fiction movie half of the time. So
did I ever tell you the devastating thing that happened to me with Xenosaga?
You didn't, but I'm going to assume you lost the save if I had to guess.
Yes. I was on the final boss and my friend came over and he wanted me to help him with an earlier boss, so I did, and then I realized I saved over my memory card.
That's brutal.
And I never really replay games, so Xenosaga Episode 1, that was where I had to stop. I totally wanted to play 2 and 3, but I was not going to replay 1.
I was going to say, they were supposed to do a collection for those games, so that would have been a cool way for you to revisit.
Maybe enough time has passed.
Yeah, what a shame.
It didn't end up happening. Unfortunately, they got canceled, which is a bummer. Yeah, I never played 2 or 3 either, like Mike, but I greatly enjoyed the first one. That was an awkward high school moment for me. It was like, I'm kind of getting into other stuff now. I got to, start trying to get a girlfriend and all this different kind of stuff, and Xenosaga was out around that time. So I just didn't have the time to dedicate to, hour-long cutscenes back then. But I have such an appreciation for that game now. Anyway, another tangent there. Overall, last thoughts, SilentSigns, on narrative in games.
I think narrative is super important, but you have to know the limits of your players. If it's a short experience that's heavy on narrative, great. Write the narrative appropriately. Do enough character development where you get your player hooked in instantly. If it's an RPG, you really gotta kind of
keep it interesting, right?
Well, not just keep it interesting, but I think you need to feed the player story incrementally enough where they're not just being bombarded with text constantly.
Like breadcrumbs, you're leading them along.
Yeah, exactly. You should learn more the further and further you progress in the game. It shouldn't be like the opening of the game is a tutorial that tells you the entire novel worth of a story, and then you have to follow all of that.
So basically you're saying don't blow your wad too early.
Yeah. Sure.
It's pacing. You gotta pace it right.
Exactly.
And a lot of games with bad stories just get pacing wrong. I think my favorite example of that is the Far Cry series. I played Far Cry 5 way back, and I remember there were so many times where the game would introduce you to this character that you're already best friends with for some reason, even though you don't even know the character's name, you don't know anything about them, and you're just supposed to assume that you care about this person, who then goes on to basically immediately die in the next mission and have a really dramatic it's so unearned. And if you have big moments in a story, they have to be earned. They have to be built up. We have to have a reason to care, I
agree. There's so many games that do a brilliant job of that. Even just off the top of my head, thinking about the Walking Dead game, the Telltale one.
Oh yeah, they do a brilliant job.
Oh my god, they do such a good job of getting the player invested and feel the hurt of loss.
That's an interesting example where the gameplay is kind of taking a back seat to the story.
But the story is worth your investment.
Enough where they made multiple seasons of it. So yeah, even though the first is still the best in my opinion. But yeah, that was a fun little debate about
kind of
narrative
fell off
games.
of those.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, well, they made 6 of them, and I'm like, okay, I think
that's enough.
We're good. Kind of with the show too. Isn't the show still running?
Apparently, there's a spin-off and then another spin-off. My friend still watches it.
It's I can only do this for so long.
It's only 57 seasons. I don't know what you're talking about.
Catch up.
We want to hear from you. What do you think about the importance of narrative in video games? Please let us know in the comments below if you are either watching/listening to this on YouTube, or if you're on YouTube Music where you can lock your phone and listen to us, or Spotify even has a social aspect where you can comment, believe it or not. My daughter was asking if Spotify is social media, And I'm like, kind of, sort of, right?
No.
In a way.
I don't think so.
There's like polls and a way to engage with community now, so it's at least has some of those elements to it.
I've never had a single conversation via Spotify, and I never will.
And really, there's no reason to, right? But either way, as for the channel this week, boy, we are stocked. I have been working pretty much nonstop, SilentSigns, to get all these videos done. We had upcoming indies that should be live for everyone listening to this. So Monday, this drops for patrons. Thursday for everybody else, as you know. Upcoming indies had 16 brand new releases.
Oh, I forgot that the Eternal Strands review wasn't live yet.
It will be now for people that are listening to the public feeds.
Right.
So
okay.
you can totally
Sorry.
talk about that.
Spoiler alert.
It's perfectly fine. But upcoming indies, we had 16 pretty promising looking releases, so be sure to check that video out. As SilentSigns was just talking about there, the Eternal Strands review will be live. That went live on Monday, so you listeners will be perfectly sunk up with that one. Eternal Strands review. I didn't care for this game very much. I think SilentSigns is in agreement with me. It is a game that is boring, without me spoiling the whole review here.
It has its issues.
So be sure to watch that. We also, this was kind of a co-op team-up review, Orcs Must Die. That review should be live for everyone right now. Orcs Must Die Death Trap. I never played this series. It dates back to 2011. I know, Mike, you had some familiarity with the Orcs Must Die franchise?
Yeah, I played the first game way back. I don't even remember when it came out, like
2011.
2012,
Yeah, 2011.
maybe. 2011. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had a good time with it, and I was pretty disappointed that the sequel was co-op, only because I mostly play single player stuff, and it felt like co-op was kind of mandatory to not completely suck at it. So I sort of fell off the series at that point. But the first game was great fun, and yeah, it was fun playing the new game for a little bit.
So SilentSigns, this was your first foray into the Orcs Must Die universe, I'm assuming, as well. So what did you think of your time with Death Trap? We had the 3-player session with you, me, and Mike. I had a good time with it myself.
It was all right. So I think the issue I ran into is it's not my usual genre.
Tower defense, we should clarify.
Tower defense, yeah. I thought we had some laughs.
We should probably explain what this game is exactly.
It's a tower defense game. You don't let the orcs in.
Yeah, there's basically
straightforward.
Wave after
There you
wave.
go. There you go. That's the whole thing. Yep.
You have waves of orcs coming after your base. You have to defend that base using a variety of different traps. Traps are a big focus, obviously, as the title implies here. And you unlock very slowly in this game. More and more traps. You level up through getting better and better at waves. I found it quite difficult, though, I have to say. But anyway, sorry to interrupt you, SilentSigns. I just wanted people to know what they're playing.
For what it is, I think it's fun enough.
Yeah, I mean, it was a game that was exactly the game it looks like.
As advertised.
There were no surprises whatsoever, but it was a decent time. I thought it was way too hard. Like it really felt like it required a lot of grinding to like get the upgrades and whatever. I don't have the patience for that. Not really my genre either, but you know, the people who like that kind of thing are gonna like it. I have no doubts about that.
I would agree, and actually for the first time in the series, I believe this is correct, it's 4-player. The other games only allowed up to 2, so that's a nice little new feature that you can take advantage of. Unfortunately, that's online only, though.
Also,
would have been nice if they had split screen.
Unfortunately, you can't all be the same character, and if you all choose the same character, it'll make it look like you can all be the same character, and then it'll change it for you right before you warp into the level.
That was annoying because we wanted to do the cat run where everyone was a cat. But yeah, that review's live right now, and that's going to do it for this week's episode of Outside of the Echo Chamber. So we hope you enjoy all of those videos. Each and every one of them should be live at the time of you listening to this. And we will see you on the next episode, everybody. Voice to the voiceless. Mike, have a good one. Talk to everybody later. For far too long, you, the gamer, have been denied honest gaming coverage. Indie developers and publishers have lost their voice, but no longer. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and head over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames to join this epic campaign for indie visibility. The echo chamber trembles as our message grows louder. Voice to the voiceless.